There. Now we can see each other. G'day. Do make yourself comfortable. Gets dark early these nights. And cold, too. The mist creeps down off the hilltops, curling round the valley and around the hut. You can feel it, smell its damp breath for days sometimes. Could tell a tale or two, that mist. Tales of things seen and heard in lonely places. Tales of people. Like young Charlie, who lived up in the stone house up in the hills. Him that married Narrated, the girl in the cabbage tree. Let me tell you about those two. You see, Charlie lived all on his own up there on the hill. There were times when he'd have traded everything he had for someone at the doorstep to welcome him home at night with a fire going. Someone just to be there.
Must have been a possum.
The only visitors Charlie ever seemed to get were possums. They came from the big bluff out there on the hilltop. Charlie didn't like that bluff. It's a wild and windy place where scarves of mist float among the trees, and when the wind moves the trunks, they creak and crack like doors opening. Sometimes Charlie's cattle would go up on the bluff, and then he had to go chasing after them. One day, when Charlie was up on the bluff looking for a runaway steer, dusk was coming on, and he still hadn't found the creature. He was in a place he'd never been before, a thicket of ancient trees. Nearby was a cabbage tree, the biggest he'd ever seen. Suddenly, there was a commotion as something scuttled in the undergrowth. Charlie dived into the bushes after it. When he came out of the bush, it wasn't with his cow. In fact, Charlie didn't know what it was he'd found.
What on earth's this thing? Looks like a soppy old rag.
But when Charlie looked more closely, he saw that it wasn't a soppy old rag at all, but a sort of scarf, and an odd one at that. It was lacy looking, yet rough as well, like fine thread woven into a piece of bark fibre. It smelt salty, like seaweed, and it had a damp, spongy feel, as if the dew was on it.
Now, who in this God-forsaken place would wear a thing like this? Well, I'd better get going or I'll be here for the night.
Next morning, some strange things happened to Charlie. It was one of those days when nothing seemed to go right.
If that blasted pup's got off with my boot, I'll tan his hide. What the? I'd like to see the dog that could do that.
Well, he got the boot down and scratched himself in the bargain. Then it was time to milk the cow, but he might as well have saved himself the bother.
Not a drop. I've heard tall hedgehogs can milk a cow. I wonder. Oh, well, may as well go and pick a bucket of apples instead. Oh, possums. Blasted possums again. Oh, no. The pigs are in the veggie garden. Oi!
By the time Charlie had got the pigs back in their pen again, he was hot and dusty and in a very bad temper. He decided it was time to have a wash and cool off.
Hi, Charlie.
Who said that? Who are you? What are you doing with my sugar sack?
Never mind who I am. And never mind about your sugar sack. Just give me back my scarf.
And what scarf's that then?
The one you pinched from me up on the hill.
Oh, so that's yours, is it?
Yes, it is, and I want it back.
Yeah, well, steady on now. What's so great about a tatty old scarf, anyway?
Never you mind. Just give it to me.
What if I don't?
If you don't give it back, I'll make your life miserable. I'll hide your clothes and drink your cow dry, gobble up your apples and leave your gate open wide as wide.
Oh, so that was you, was it? Well, you led me a right dance this morning, you little scamp. And now you want your scarf back. Well, I'll just have to think about that, won't I?
Please, Charlie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you've done me a mischief, you have. You've drunk my milk, you've eaten my apples, even let the pigs into the veggie garden. And I don't think it was the fairies that took the eggs from under my hens, or nibbled the ham in the pantry, or spilt the flour, was it now? I thought so. By rights, you owe me something.
I want my scarf.
Fair's fair. You owe me.
I could cook for you.
Right.
And tidy your house. And milk your cow. If you'll give my scarf back.
Well then, that'll do nicely. Don't fret about your scarf. It's safe and snug and out of harm's way. You'll get it back by and by. Haven't you got any clothes to wear? Well, we'll have to see what we can dig up for you. Can't have you walking around in an old sugar sack. Besides, I'll need that for the spuds.
Truth of the matter was, Charlie had taken a fancy to the girl. Well, she might be wild, but she was sturdy, with strong hands and feet as tough as leather. She'd be a good little worker, he reckoned. And she was, none better. It was a fine thing to come home to smoke curling up out of the chimney, and her standing at the door in her smock and apron to welcome him home. And because she didn't have a name, or wouldn't tell him what it was, he called her Narrated, and he thought it suited her nicely. She seemed contented enough, housekeeping for Charlie in his house on the hill. By and by they got married, and in their own way they were happy together. But it was a while before Charlie got used to some of Nereda's strange ways. For one thing, she never did like sleeping in a bed.
Nerida? Why don't you sleep lying down like ordinary people?
It's not how I'm used to sleeping.
You're a strange creature. Sort of like a gypsy. Yet that's not it either. Maybe one day you'll tell me who you really are.
And one day, on a cold winter's evening, she did.
I was born in an ancient cabbage tree that grows on the bluff. Long ago, when the black seeds sprouted in the warm earth, I was there, like a tiny kernel in the seed. And I grew as the tree grew, until I was tall and slender. In the daytime, I slept inside the trunk, where it was always warm, and listened to the leaves rustling outside, and swayed with the wind as the trees swayed. At dusk, I would go out into the forest to gather food, fish and berries and fern roots and honey from the flax flowers. Wherever I went, I wore my scarf, wrapped tightly around me like a skin. With the scarf, I could slip in and out of the cabbage tree whenever I liked, and leap lightly from one treetop to the next. And when danger was near, I swung the scarf around my head until it fanned out into a web of mist, wrapped itself around me like a cocoon. But there was nothing dangerous in the forest, so I got bold and careless, and that's why I didn't see you coming that evening until it was almost too late. As I ran away, I felt the scarf snag on some brambles, and suddenly it was torn from my body. And then, all of a sudden, my limbs were heavy as stone. I couldn't slip into my tree anymore. So I curled up, shivering in a thicket, thinking I would never again know the wind as a tree feels it, or leap like a young doe.
You live in a world all of your own, narrated. I still don't know who you really are.
Dew's on it still. Should be as dry as old bone by now. Won't catch me listening to any of her fairy stories. Let sleeping scarves lie, I say.